Welcome, the anointed ones. The truth has a strange habit. It doesn't panic when watched. Some investigations are launched to protect the truth. Others are launched because someone is terrified of it. And when you understand that difference, everything that happened to you suddenly makes sense. This wasn't a background check. It was a fishing expedition. A carefully disguised search party sent out not to understand you, but to validate how badly you were treated. Because here's a quiet fact most people don't talk about. False narratives collapse faster under documentation than they do under confrontation. In real investigations, evidence is king. In fake ones, assumptions are. And assumptions don't age well once cameras, messages, and timelines enter the room. What makes this situation almost funny, in a tragic kind of way, is that the people so busy zooming into your life forgot to zoom out on their own behavior. They were pressing record while whispering, taking notes while lying, coordinating while pretending to be confused. It's like trying to steal quietly in a room full of mirrors and being shocked when the reflection snitches. That's not strategy, that's self-sabotage with confidence. And the backfire wasn't loud at first, it was subtle. A pause in conversations, a few uncomfortable glances. Suddenly, the concern sounded rehearsed. The timelines didn't line up. The concern had too many witnesses and not enough facts. That's when the mood shifted. Because when an investigation produces nothing about its target, but everything about its initiators, people start asking the wrong people to explain themselves. And that's when panic sets in. What they didn't plan for was your consistency. No dramatic collapse, no defensive speeches, no sudden personality change. You stayed ordinary, grounded, unbothered, and nothing unsettles people faster than realizing their entire operation failed because the person they were watching had nothing to hide and didn't even need to prove it. So while they were busy collecting evidence, the real footage was collecting them. Every whisper, every coordinated story, every awkward silence caught mid-act. Betrayal hates documentation. It thrives in shadows, not in HD. And now the same investigation meant to corner you has done something else entirely. It handed the spotlight to the wrong people, flipped the script without warning, and turned caught in the act into a group activity. Stay right here, because what backfired wasn't just their plan, it was their confidence. Number one. The investigation didn't expose you. It exposed the desperation behind it. What most people never admit is that investigations like this don't usually start with facts. They start with discomfort. Someone felt unsettled by your presence, your progress, or your refusal to play the role they assigned you, and instead of dealing with that feeling, they went hunting for a reason to justify it. That's where the desperation comes in. They weren't trying to understand you. They were trying to prove something, anything, that would make their behavior toward you feel acceptable. The moment an investigation is driven by emotion rather than evidence, it stops being neutral. Every detail gets twisted. Normal choices are framed as suspicious. Growth is treated like deception. Silence becomes hiding, and confidence becomes arrogance. What they didn't realize is that desperation has a smell. People can sense when someone is reaching too hard, connecting dots that don't belong together, trying to force a conclusion that refuses to show up. As they dug deeper, the story they hoped to tell kept collapsing. Background checks came back clean. Patterns refused to form. Instead of finding proof against you, they found themselves circling the same empty space over and over again. That's when frustration sets in, and frustrated people start revealing themselves. They push harder. They talk too much. They loop others into the process. The investigation quietly stops being about you and starts becoming about them. Observers notice that shift. The tone changes. The questions sound less like curiosity and more like accusation. The concern feels rehearsed. You can support this work through the link in the pinned comment, with a coffee, a donation, or becoming a member of our community. By doing so, you become part of Jesus' plan to save souls who are still stuck in fog. Every seed turns into light that fights against darkness. If you water others, you will be watered yourself. People begin to wonder why so much energy is being spent trying to uncover something that clearly isn't there. When an investigation produces nothing but persistence, it raises a new question. What is driving this? That's the backfire. Instead of uncovering your flaws, they exposed their fixation. Instead of proving you untrustworthy, they made themselves look obsessed. And once that realization lands, it doesn't leave. Because nothing makes people uncomfortable faster than realizing the problem wasn't hidden in your past. It was loud in their behavior the entire time. Number 2, their need to document you turned into evidence against them. Betrayers always think they're clever. They believe if they write it down, record it, or capture it on camera, they are in control. They think documentation is power. But what they fail to understand is that every note, screenshot, and recording they create is a double-edged sword. While they intended it as a weapon against you, it quietly became a mirror reflecting their own intentions, their own deceit, and their own desperation. Every act meant to corner you ended up cornering them instead. When someone records interactions with hidden agendas, it's because they believe perception is more important than truth. They are banking on twisting reality to fit a narrative. The more meticulously they log your words, your actions, your history, the more obvious their obsession becomes. A record meant to expose you ends up highlighting how calculated and rehearsed their scheme is. Every timestamp, every repeated whisper, every copied message stacks together into a timeline, and timelines don't lie. As the investigation unfolded, what viewers couldn't miss was how consistent your behavior remained against the backdrop of their frantic documentation. Their notes revealed nervousness, coordination, and attempts to manipulate, while your life remained steady, uncomplicated, and clear. The contrast was undeniable. Their proof of wrongdoing looked more like evidence of plotting. Every video snippet, every message thread they thought would incriminate you, ended up proving how tangled and dishonest their operation was. The irony is brutal. The more they tried to control the story, the more transparent they became. They were caught not because you made a mistake, but because their obsession demanded visibility. When they wanted the world to see you as the problem, they accidentally gave the world a front-row seat to their own moral collapse. And once that happens, trust evaporates fast, credibility disappears, and the narrative flips in an instant. In the end, their need to document didn't give them power over you. It exposed them to everyone else. Their desperation, fear, and manipulation were laid bare. The investigation wasn't just ineffective. It backfired spectacularly, turning their own tools of control into the clearest evidence of their guilt. Number 3, the camera didn't catch you slipping. It caught them coordinating. Betrayal has a funny way of revealing itself when people think no one is watching. They move carefully, whisper strategically, and act as if every word is a secret. But what they forget is that their obsession with control makes them predictable. The camera didn't catch you in a moment of weakness. It didn't record a single misstep on your part. What it captured was far more telling. Every glance, every whisper, every exchange that revealed coordination, planning, and alignment against you. Their own actions became the proof, louder and clearer than anything they hoped to fabricate. As the footage rolled, the pattern was undeniable. Conversations that were meant to seem casual looked rehearsed. Side discussions meant to sow doubt appeared as coordination sessions. Every interaction meant to manipulate perception, exposed intention. Their energy, so focused on monitoring and strategizing against you, left traces too obvious to ignore. The more they tried to appear natural, the more the camera revealed their tension, their secrecy, and their complicity. It wasn't subtle. It was painfully clear that this was a planned effort, not a series of coincidences. The astonishing part is how ordinary they looked while orchestrating it. No one expects the betrayal to be so organized. That's what made it undeniable. They were caught in the act of being deliberate. Their coordination wasn't just about taking shots at you. It was about controlling the story, shaping perceptions, and attempting to manufacture truth. But the more you try to stage deception, the more obvious it becomes under scrutiny. The footage, meant to intimidate or incriminate, instead exposed the premeditation behind every move. And while they believed their control over the narrative was secure, the reality was flipped completely. You didn't have to react, argue, or defend yourself. Their own efforts to manipulate the perception around you created a map of their intentions, and that map made their guilt impossible to hide. What the camera captured wasn't weakness on your side. It was the blueprint of their conspiracy. Every frame turned the tables. Every glance, every conversation, every nervous movement became evidence that the betrayers were orchestrating a story that was falling apart, even as they filmed it. Number 4, they studied your past because they couldn't control your present. When people lose influence over who you are right now, they almost always go digging backward. It's not curiosity, it's strategy. Your present was too stable, too self-directed, too free from their reach, and that unsettled them. They couldn't manipulate your reactions, steer your decisions, or predict your next move. So they went looking for an earlier version of you, hoping that somewhere in your past they'd find a lever they could still pull. What they misunderstood is that growth leaves evidence too. They expected old mistakes, weak moments, or unfinished stories that could be dragged into the present and weaponized. Instead, they found progression. They found someone who had already faced pressure, learned lessons, and moved forward without needing permission or applause. The past didn't contradict your present, it explained it. And that was the problem for them. When you can't control someone, you try to redefine them. That's what the background digging really was. An attempt to freeze you in time, to frame you as outdated, flawed, or unfinished. But the present kept interrupting that narrative. You were too consistent. Your choices lined up. Your behavior didn't match the version they were trying to sell. The more they tried to resurrect an old image, the more ridiculous it looked next to who you are now. There's also a quiet admission hidden in their behavior. By focusing on your past, they were indirectly admitting defeat in the present. They couldn't challenge your integrity today, so they hoped yesterday would do the work for them. But time doesn't work that way. People evolve, and when evolution is real, the past becomes context, not ammunition. What truly backfired is that their obsession with your history revealed their insecurity about your current position. People only dig when they feel behind. They only research when they feel outpaced. While they were busy analyzing who you used to be, you were already operating beyond their reach. That's why the investigation failed. It was looking in the wrong direction at the wrong time for the wrong reason. Number 5. Their questions revealed more about their fear than your history. When people interrogate you under the guise of curiosity, what they are really doing is projecting their own fear. Every pointed question, every insinuation, every attempt to uncover a hidden flaw isn't about truth. It's about control. They wanted answers they didn't deserve, trying to confirm suspicions that existed only in their minds. The way they phrased their questions, the topics they lingered on, and the intensity they brought all reflected their own anxiety. The more they pressed, the clearer it became that they were worried not about who you were, but about what you represented: confidence, independence, and the impossibility of being easily manipulated. Their questions weren't random. They followed patterns that revealed insecurity. They asked about decisions you made, choices you took, and moments they couldn't influence. Places where you had already proven yourself untouchable. And with every attempt to dig up dirt, they broadcasted one truth louder than any accusation. They were afraid of losing relevance over you. You can support this work through the link in the pinned comment, with a coffee, a donation, or becoming a member of our community. By doing so, you become part of Jesus' plan to save souls who are still stuck in fog. Every seed turns into light that fights against darkness. If you water others, you will be watered yourself. Their interrogation became a mirror, showing their fear in sharp focus, even if they thought it was hidden behind authority or seriousness. Observers could see it too. The questions that were supposed to corner you only highlighted their desperation. Every assumption, every insinuation, every repeated probe exposed how out of control they felt. Instead of uncovering a flaw in you, they revealed their inability to handle someone who operates beyond their influence. People began noticing the imbalance. It wasn't your life under scrutiny, it was their emotional instability under the pressure of your existence. What makes this revelation so powerful is how it shifts perception instantly. Fear is contagious, but so is clarity. When others saw the intensity of their questioning, combined with the lack of anything incriminating, the narrative flipped. You didn't have to defend yourself. The fear in their voice, the tension in their delivery, and the futility of their efforts spoke volumes. The investigation became less about uncovering truth and more about exposing the fragility of those trying to manipulate it. Their questions, meant to intimidate, only confirmed one fact. Their fear was real. Their grasp was weak, and their scrutiny had backfired spectacularly. Number 6. They thought authority would make their narrative believable. There's a common mistake that betrayers make. They believe that if someone in a position of power backs their story, it automatically becomes true. They think a title, a badge, or a position can lend weight to an otherwise hollow claim. So they involve leaders, systems, and supposed authorities, hoping that the mere presence of influence will make their accusations stick. What they didn't realize is that authority only amplifies truth, not lies. When the truth is missing, authority becomes a spotlight that exposes their desperation, not a shield that protects them. They assumed that linking their narrative to official channels would intimidate people and silence dissent. Every form signed, every email copied, every official-looking document was meant to create credibility. But in reality, those efforts were a trap. Authority magnifies scrutiny. Once leaders or officials are brought into a situation, they don't accept assumptions. They demand proof. And when the proof isn't there, the attempt to manipulate suddenly becomes conspicuous. Every action taken to make their story believable instead highlighted how thin their foundation really was. The irony is brutal. Their reliance on authority revealed two things. First, that their story couldn't survive on its own, and second, that they were panicking. People who are confident in the truth don't need to call in reinforcements. They don't need witnesses to validate what everyone can already see. But when your narrative depends on titles rather than facts, the desperation is obvious and observers pick up on it instantly. And as the investigation unfolded, their strategy collapsed under its own weight. The more authority figures got involved, the more their lies became transparent. Each attempt to manipulate perception backfired, turning their credibility into a liability. What they thought would make people believe them only made them look more foolish, more controlling, and more desperate. By trying to weaponize authority, they ended up creating the clearest possible evidence of their obsession and insecurity, while your truth remained unshaken, standing alone and unchallenged in stark contrast to their faltering performance. Number 7. Your consistency ruined their story arc. Betrayers rely on contradiction. Their entire plan hinges on the idea that you will falter, slip, or show cracks under pressure. They imagine a moment when your behavior will confirm their narrative, when your words or actions will feed into the story they've built. They expect drama, they expect emotion, and they expect you to react in ways that are convenient for their plan. What they didn't account for is that consistency is a weapon they can't anticipate. Your steady behavior, your unshakable responses, and your refusal to be thrown off course dismantled their carefully constructed arc faster than anything else could. Every effort they made to provoke you, every trap they set, every insinuation they planted was meant to create conflict, a narrative that could be repeated, dissected and sold as proof of your flaws. But nothing worked. You stayed grounded, calm, clear. No sudden outburst, no defensive reactions, no moments of panic or regret that could be twisted into evidence. The consistency of your character made their manipulation transparent. It highlighted the desperation behind their actions rather than anything about you. Observers notice these things, even subconsciously. When someone's story is messy, full of assumptions and dependent on reactions that never happen, people sense the gap between fabrication and reality. Your consistency became a silent contradiction to every false narrative, making their accusations not just weak, but absurd. What they hoped would feel like a drama unfolding instead looked like a frantic, overcomplicated script with too many writers and no direction. In a way, your calm and steady presence forced the truth into the spotlight without a single word from you. It revealed who was orchestrating the deception and who was simply living their life. Their expectations of chaos highlighted your control, and their failure to provoke it made them look foolish, desperate, and transparent. Consistency didn't just protect you. It exposed them, rewrote the narrative, and showed the world that no matter how elaborate their plot, it could never succeed against someone who refuses to be bent or broken by it. Number 8. They underestimated how visible integrity becomes under pressure. Integrity isn't always loud. Most people assume it's quiet, almost invisible, until it's put to the test. That's exactly what happened here. The people trying to dig into your life assumed that pressure would expose flaws, that under scrutiny cracks would appear, and that any vulnerability could be manipulated into evidence. They underestimated one fundamental truth. Integrity shines brightest under pressure, and when it does, it's impossible to fake or undermine. Every attempt to provoke you, to unsettle you, or to manipulate the narrative only highlighted how grounded you were. Where they expected hesitation, there was clarity. Where they expected confusion, there was composure. Where they expected emotional reaction, there was nothing but calm, collected behavior. Observers may not have noticed the minute details, but they felt the energy, the unmistakable presence of someone who cannot be shaken by baseless attacks. Integrity doesn't just survive scrutiny, it becomes more visible, more magnetic, and impossible to discredit. Their mistake was assuming that everyone would focus solely on the negative they were projecting. They thought that creating pressure would bend the truth, that someone under examination would crack, stumble, or betray themselves. What they didn't account for was how pressure serves as a spotlight. Every false accusation, every whispered claim, every orchestrated story only made the contrast between their chaos and your stability more striking. People watching could see exactly where the authenticity was, and it wasn't with them. By the time the investigation revealed nothing against you, the impact wasn't neutral. It was powerful. Your integrity, tested in a furnace of lies and manipulation, was undeniable. While they were busy constructing a narrative that depended on exposing flaws, it became painfully clear who had flaws and who had character. The irony is brutal. Their attempts to tear you down amplified your truth. Every effort to destabilize you only confirmed that the real strength was always yours, and no scheme, no manipulation, no amount of scrutiny could ever change that reality. Integrity under pressure doesn't just survive. It becomes a living contradiction to anyone trying to fabricate failure, and in this case, it shattered every plan they had. Number 9. The footage made it impossible to play confused anymore. There comes a moment in every attempt to manipulate, deceive, or frame someone when the truth refuses to stay hidden. In this case, the footage did exactly that. The people orchestrating the investigation thought confusion could be their cover. They assumed that if they acted puzzled, hesitant, or innocent in front of cameras, no one would notice the coordination behind the scenes. What they didn't anticipate is that cameras capture more than words. They capture intention, timing, energy, and alignment. Every glance, every whispered instruction, every synchronized move suddenly became impossible to deny. The backfire hit the moment it became clear that the confusion was fake. The audience watching could see the pause before certain exchanges, the rehearsed expressions, the awkward hesitations that were anything but accidental. The very tool meant to hide their planning, the camera, instead froze the evidence in real time. It made pretending impossible. Every move they made, meant to justify their actions or hide their schemes, became a record that contradicted their narrative. What they wanted to look accidental or spontaneous instead appeared deliberate, strategic, and orchestrated. That's what makes exposure so powerful. It's not that they made a single mistake. It's that their entire operation depended on maintaining control over perception, and the footage removed that control entirely. Their rehearsed confusion became transparent. Their manipulations, once subtle, now had clear markers that anyone paying attention could follow, and every attempt to redirect attention only added more layers to the evidence. The irony is that the footage didn't just protect you, it flipped the entire story. The spotlight shifted from you, the supposed subject of scrutiny, to them, the orchestrators of the deception. Observers could now see exactly who was manipulating, coordinating, and fabricating confusion for their own advantage. Their attempt to hide behind apparent bewilderment exposed them entirely. In trying to protect themselves, they became the focal point of exposure, and that's when the narrative changed forever. The footage didn't just capture moments, it captured the truth, unaltered, undeniable, and completely unstoppable. Number 10. Their allies became uncomfortable witnesses. When people orchestrate betrayal, they often assume everyone involved is fully committed. They believe loyalty or fear will hold the group together, that no one will question the narrative, and that no cracks will appear in the carefully constructed plan. What they didn't count on is that alignment with wrongdoing is rarely absolute. Some participants follow blindly, but many watch quietly, weighing the cost of complicity against their own conscience. As the investigation unfolded, those who had once been willing collaborators began to feel the weight of the truth pressing on them. Suddenly, being a part of the scheme was uncomfortable, and that discomfort was visible. Allies who had once participated out of fear, obligation, or the illusion of power found themselves in a precarious position. The evidence didn't just expose the target, it exposed the orchestrators and their network. Every whispered comment, every shared screenshot, every attempted manipulation became a public record of their involvement. For those on the periphery, it was impossible to pretend ignorance. Their role, even if minor, was now a witness to the obsession and desperation of the main betrayers. And witnesses, when forced to confront reality, rarely stay quiet forever. The moment those allies started questioning their own participation, the group's cohesion began to unravel. People who once nodded along, repeated narratives, or reinforced lies suddenly hesitated, avoided certain conversations, or even subtly contradicted the main orchestrators. That hesitation, that doubt, didn't just weaken the scheme, it exposed it. The more people internally questioned their actions, the more the plot lost credibility. The betrayers' sense of control slipped as those around them silently acknowledged the truth they had been trying to bury. The beauty of this backfire is subtle but devastating. While the betrayers focused all their energy on one target, they failed to see the ripple effect of exposure. Their allies, no longer comfortable being complicit, became inadvertent witnesses against them. The investigation didn't just fail, it created fractures in the betrayers' own camp, leaving them isolated, exposed, and powerless, while the truth quietly took center stage. Number 11. They expected shame. Instead, they triggered respect. Betrayers operate on a simple assumption. If they expose someone's supposed faults, the target will crumble, blush, apologize, or at least struggle under the weight of accusation. They imagine shame as a tool, a way to assert dominance and shift perception. What they didn't anticipate is that true resilience doesn't respond to intimidation the way they think it does. Instead of creating shame, their actions amplified respect, not just for you, but for anyone watching. Every scheme, every insinuation, every effort to dig dirt was meant to corner you, to make you falter under scrutiny. They assumed the more elaborate the attack, the more effective it would be. But the irony is that people who are grounded in integrity and strength don't absorb shame the way others might. Your composure, clarity, and calmness under pressure highlighted the contrast between your unshakable presence and their frantic, overworked attempts at manipulation. The audience watching couldn't help but notice. One side was stable, the other scrambling. One had nothing to hide, the other had everything to explain. The more they expected you to react, the more you refused, the more their credibility unraveled. Every whisper, every note, every orchestrated move intended to humiliate only made you appear untouchable. Respect doesn't always come from achievement or charisma. It often comes from the way someone carries themselves when unfairly attacked. You didn't have to shout, argue, or defend yourself. Your refusal to participate in their drama turned the spotlight onto them, revealing their obsession, their desperation, and their insecurity. The brilliance of this backfire is in its simplicity. The more they tried to create shame, the more they highlighted your strength. People watching began to see the truth intuitively. The target wasn't weak, wrong, or exposed. The betrayers were. Every intended humiliation became a testament to your character. Every attempt to undermine you strengthened your reputation. What they thought would diminish you only elevated your presence, turning fear and shame into admiration and respect, and leaving those who orchestrated the scheme scrambling to explain themselves, while the world quietly cheered the unshakable reality of who you truly are. Number 12. The real crime wasn't found in your background. It was found in their behavior. All along the focus was supposed to be on you, as if your past or your choices could justify the actions taken against you. They wanted the world to believe there was a flaw, a misstep, anything that could excuse their obsession. But as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the real story wasn't about you at all. The crime, the wrongdoing, the betrayal, it wasn't hidden in your history. It was screaming from the actions of those trying to expose you. Every manipulated conversation, every orchestrated lie, every secretive meeting revealed more than they intended. Their behavior was sloppy under pressure, desperate in the face of scrutiny, and relentless in a way that could only be described as obsession. They tried to create a narrative where you were guilty, but their guilt became more obvious than anything they hoped to find. By the time people looked closely at what was happening, it wasn't about your life, your past, or your choices. It was about theirs. The irony is brutal. They spent so much energy examining your life, documenting every detail, and orchestrating schemes, while failing to see that every move made against you left a trail of evidence about themselves. The deeper they dug, the more transparent their motives became. Manipulation, coordination, fear, obsession. Those weren't hidden secrets. They were visible, undeniable, and impossible to defend. Their actions became a living record of their own misconduct. Observers could no longer miss it. The more they scrutinized you, the more their flaws were illuminated. The investigation, meant to justify their behavior or paint you in a negative light, backfired spectacularly. It turned the tables, exposing the orchestrators as the real violators of trust and integrity. Every calculated move intended to trap you instead highlighted their desperation, insecurity, and moral failure. In the end, the lesson was clear. They underestimated what transparency does under pressure. While they tried to frame you, they revealed themselves. The so-called crime in your background was never there. The real wrongdoing was theirs, plain for everyone to see, and nothing could erase the truth that their betrayal, not your life, was the offense that could not be ignored. Number 13. Exposure didn't come from revenge. It came from alignment. The most remarkable part of this backfire isn't that revenge surfaced. It's that it didn't. There was no calculated retaliation, no secret plan to leak information, no underhanded scheme from your side. What unfolded was far simpler and far more powerful. Alignment. When truth, consistency, and integrity operate in harmony, they have a way of making deception collapse on its own. The exposure wasn't forced. It was inevitable. The universe of scrutiny, manipulation, and obsession around you simply couldn't maintain its structure against your steady presence and the natural flow of reality. While the betrayers were busy creating a narrative, timing every whisper, coordinating every lie, and documenting every moment, their alignment with dishonesty made them fragile. Lies require maintenance, manipulation demands energy, and conspiracies are sustained only by the illusion of control. You, however, didn't need control. You didn't need to micromanage perception. Your alignment, calm, composed, consistent, and true, became a gravitational force that drew the gaps, contradictions, and inconsistencies into the open. Every attempt they made to orchestrate the narrative collided with this force, and it broke apart without resistance. Observers, consciously or not, noticed it. Nothing about your behavior shifted under pressure. Nothing about your presence contradicted reality. That contrast between authenticity and obsession was glaring. Every orchestrated attempt to manipulate perception highlighted how unnecessary and desperate the betrayers were. Their chaos, once hidden under the guise of investigation, became readable as soon as it collided with your steady alignment. The world didn't need to be told who was right. It was obvious in every recorded moment, every whispered conversation, every forced reaction caught on camera. The brilliance of this backfire is in its subtlety. Exposure didn't need a dramatic reveal, a showdown, or a retaliatory strike. It arrived naturally because the elements around you were misaligned while you remained centered. Truth, by its nature, finds its path. Lies, when stretched thin, snap. And in this case, the alignment of your life, actions, and presence ensured that the betrayer's entire operation collapsed under its own weight, leaving you untouched and undeniable while their desperation played out in full view of everyone paying attention. Number 14. They thought catching you would end you. It activated you. The plan was simple in their minds. Catch you in something, anything, expose you just enough to weaken your position, stain your name, and slow you down. They believed that once attention turned toward you in a negative way, you would shrink, retreat, or start explaining yourself endlessly. What they never considered is that pressure doesn't always break people. Sometimes it sharpens them. Sometimes it wakes something up that was already there, just waiting for resistance to give it form. Instead of collapsing, you became clearer. Instead of losing your footing, you found it. The scrutiny forced you to see exactly who was for you, who was watching, and who was working against you. That awareness is activating. It strips away confusion, false loyalty, and wasted energy. You didn't come out of this weaker. You came out more focused, more deliberate, and far less accessible to manipulation. There's also a psychological shift that happens when an attack fails publicly. Once people see that an attempt to take you down didn't work, they stop trying the same way again. The rules change. You're no longer perceived as someone who can be quietly damaged. You're seen as someone who can withstand pressure and remain intact. That alone alters how others approach you, speak to you, and think about crossing you in the future. What really activated you, though, was the realization that you don't need approval to move forward. When people try to expose you and fail, they unintentionally free you. You stop carrying the weight of other people's expectations, explanations, and projections. You move with a different kind of confidence, not loud, not arrogant, but settled. The kind that doesn't need validation because it's already been tested. They thought catching you would be the end of your momentum. Instead, it marked the end of their leverage. The attempt exposed the limits of their power and the depth of your resilience. You didn't just survive the spotlight, you adjusted to it. And once someone adapts to pressure instead of fearing it, they don't go back to who they were before. They move forward, activated, aware, and no longer available for the same old games. The story of this investigation isn't just about scrutiny or betrayal. It's about the way truth, consistency, and integrity operate under pressure. Every attempt to expose you, every orchestrated scheme, every whisper and camera angle that was meant to corner you ended up revealing far more about the betrayers than it ever could about you. Their desperation, coordination, and reliance on fear and manipulation became the very evidence that turned the narrative on its head. What they thought would weaken you, embarrass you, or stall your momentum instead highlighted your resilience, composure, and unshakable presence. From the very beginning, the investigation was built on assumptions, obsession, and a desire to control perception. But life doesn't bend to fear or fabrication. Your growth, your calm, and your integrity became forces that could not be undermined. The footage, the scrutiny, and the coordination that were meant to incriminate you only illuminated their obsession and exposed the truth. The real flaws weren't in your story, they were in theirs. Allies grew uncomfortable, authority became a double-edged sword, and every whispered plan, documented note, and attempted manipulation served as proof of their own unraveling. The brilliance of this backfire lies not in retaliation or revenge, but in natural alignment. You didn't have to fight, argue, or justify yourself. The world simply saw the contrast between chaos and stability, desperation and clarity, manipulation and authenticity. The more they tried to corner you, the more unstoppable you appeared. The more they sought to create shame, the more respect you earned. And when all was revealed, the narrative shifted entirely. The betrayers were exposed, their credibility shattered, and you emerged not just intact, but activated, untouchable, and undeniable. This is more than a story of survival. It's a testament to what happens when truth meets pressure, when integrity meets scrutiny, and when the determined refuse to be bent by the schemes of others. Your story shows that attacks meant to break you can, in fact, awaken your full strength. It proves that the real power isn't in hiding flaws, but in standing unshakable while others expose themselves. If you found this story revealing, insightful, and empowering, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more content that uncovers hidden truths. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video so others can witness how resilience, clarity, and authenticity always prevail, even when the world tries to turn against you. Stay alert, stay grounded, and remember, the backfire is real, and the truth always wins. God bless you.